welcome to my channel, Cute Little Crow. Did you have a good day? Did you have a good night? Are you having a good day? Are you having a good night? I want to introduce my subject, which is a dream that I had the other day. And I feel like it was special because it stood out as part of a dream map. Part of a dream map. Kind of like a matrix, I guess you could say, but sometimes I have dreams where I go into a certain part of myself, and this was one of them. And it was really, for me, it stood out as just something that was really necessary, I guess, from the dream world perspective. And I don't know if you guys dream, but like, I don't share my dreams to try and like advertise them or urge other people to do it. I share them because that's what we do in this world, you know. And I'm writing a book right now about them, and there's this mapping system in my dream world. And you know, like over the last 6 months, which have gone by like really fast, I've shared my dreams and, you know, found myself really in touch with this mapping system in a whole new way, especially when it comes to writing my book. It's like the book has become like a wall, and me blogging about my dreams in the last 6 months since I turned 45 has become a foundation. And before, it was that my book was just a vision, and I didn't think I would ever have the confidence or the willpower really to like start it and dive in, because I'd never journaled really. I didn't, you know, have devices to record on. I didn't know where to start, and so everything was just, it's still mostly just in my memory. But when I had this dream the other night, it really confirmed for me that I have this gift. And, you know, like, I don't think it's necessary to share it. And I don't know how many people out there I'll be able to relay this information to. And I don't know how many people are interested in this kind of stuff, but the world is our oyster. Everybody has their own world. Everybody has their own dreams, and everybody has their own intellectual property. So I feel like this dream was important, and you know, I was blogging with my fingers and a keyboard and posting it on my WordPress, a girlinherdreams.ca. And then because I have a website, cutelittlecrow.ca, I really felt like I needed to actually just video all of my dreams of the last 6 months. I can't video my dreams themselves, but take those blogs and kind of remix them, you know, into like how I really feel, because writing is hard. Writing is hard, and I was like writing about the same amount in my book as I was in this new chapter of my life that I should really name like 45 and onward or something like that. And the other one should be like, you know, I don't know, like 45 and under. But it doesn't really matter. Age is really nothing but a number, right? The fact of the matter is that when you see yourself and project yourself into a time in your life, it's not going to look the way that it looks in your imagination. And same with dreams, you're not going to be able to talk about them in exact detail and explain it the way you would be able to take a picture of like a hotel room in the Fairmont Hotel and say, hey guys, do you like the room I stayed in? Isn't it so nice? And even then, it's not going to look anything like it did to you. And at the end of the day, when it all comes down to whatever it comes down to, and you take all the layers off and like get to the nitty gritty and get to the bottom of things, like only you can see the way that you see, right? And that's what's hard for empaths is we live in a world where we're being constantly like, you know, we're being constantly stimulated in order for us to see things how another person, another company, another, you know, another advertising group, another photographer, another whatever sees them, right? And that, you know, that gets frustrating because you want to see things your way and you see things the way that you see them. And you know, the mind gets tired, especially a mind that is imaginative, creative, right? A mind that has bigger visions, and a mind that is connected to the heart. A mind that is connected to the heart has empathy, and it can just be really challenging to be somebody like that in a world where that's almost like a sense that we don't talk about, you know? So, anyways, I had this dream, and the map that I'm talking about is the map of my city that I live in. And when I got to the city, I think I was in total shock because we drove down from the Northwest Territories, and I was like, just coming out of early childhood. I was in grade one, and you know, going from living in darkness most of the time and isolated in a trailer where it's like really cold to being in a place that's like, you know, has buildings and lots of cars and traffic and busy workers and construction. I mean, now it's even crazier. Um, I think it was just a big, huge culture shock for me and a massive transition. And I kind of lost my dreams for a while. Like, I was a big dreamer as a very young child and have like some extremely lucid and vivid memories of dreams that I feel like I almost had like a withdrawal from them. Like, they were so, you know, so good and they were my world. And then all of a sudden I was like living in this world. And then we were all of a sudden driving down here, and, you know, then it was time to like face reality. And I lost sight of what was important to me for a couple of years. And then I started having nightmares because I think nightmares reflect, you know, a part of you that's not feeling very safe or connected, you know, to, I mean, basically like your higher self. And I mean, everybody looks at it differently, but when I started having these nightmares, I realized like I was feeling really intimidated and feeling really like there was something invasive going on, invading my dream space, my sacred space, my realm, you know, like my body essentially. And I couldn't function on the reality plane. Like, that just wasn't what I was here for. And there wasn't really a choice. I had to have dreams. So I started building this dream app, or it built, I guess it built itself, but I mean, obviously I was part of it because it's my brain. But this dream map has become really intricate, and it's also connected to like where I'm from. And so there's been a lot of past life regression therapy that's been happening since I was about 12, when I kind of like hit one of my low points, because life is a roller coaster. And, you know, I didn't know at the time how to explain to people like that I was neurodivergent and that I was like, very visual, and, that I like to sleep all the time. I'm not all the time, but like, I like had my own schedule, my own clock inside. Um, and I also never really talked about how it felt to be, transplanted, right? Transplanted from like one hemisphere, well, the top of the hemisphere I'm in, to like, this island. And I know it's part of life. People move, right? There's new beginnings, people pass away, people get hurt, new jobs, new school, right? Like all of that stuff is a part of life, and I'm all for that. Like I'm very sentimental. I'm like all about, you know, just rolling with the punches and like family stuff, drama, milestones, celebrations. And I'm very open to trauma and everything else. So it's not that I was like resisting life, but my body didn't want to be doing something that was like against what was right for me. And the Gregorian calendar, the school system, the institutional kind of way of life with these politics and like just really surface level knowledge, it didn't feel like the right path for me. I felt very tense. As a kid, I had like some pretty intense experiences growing up in gymnastics, and like, I don't know, competitive stuff wasn't for me. Like there was just a lot of signs pointing to the fact that I was more functional when I was doing things that were in line with like spirituality, you know, for lack of a better word. I feel like it's just so overused now, but the nice thing is that somehow I was blessed with the ability to still be able to portray like who I really was inside to counselors, psychiatrists, doctors, and I was very receptive to therapy. So that is something that I had going for me like immediately, and it prevented me, I think, from slipping through many, many cracks, right? Like when they say somebody slips through the cracks, I feel like it's like a nightmare, and they just keep slipping through cracks, like new cracks. There's always something underneath them opening up and like, avalanching or collapsing. And so then you're just like met with one abyss after another. And I saw that in a lot of different people. I saw that in a lot of different visions as a child with my mom, because she was one of the people who kind of did in the end. And, maybe that's what made me more receptive to therapy and to support. But this dream map of this city, it's exactly the way the city looks. But for some reason, like sometimes I'll be like downtown in the city in a dream. And then, somehow there'll be like something guiding, like lights or like something that I step on, or like just something architectural. Or maybe it's like the fact that like I've done past life regression, and so like layers will come through, right? Like layers of the map of the city and its development over time will kind of like show through, like older trees, or like places that perhaps I don't see, and that maybe like people do on the other side, or vice versa. Like maybe I am part of a different side of the same map and I'm seeing it from my perspective, but when I'm dreaming, I'm able to like move into a different timeline or layer. And I wrote about some of this at the beginning of my blog when I was just in the beginning stages of it, saying, hey, I'm going to be sharing like from now on, instead of like saving all of these memories for another book, because that is challenging. And I'm just going to do it now. And so it was almost like a rebirth in a way. And at first, when I was first starting to blog, I was like, oh, I'm not even going to have any dreams. Like, I'm going to be so like self-conscious because I'm like going to be sharing them that I'm going to be like blocking them out because that's just like one of the things that I do. But that's not what happened. Instead, I started having like really intense dreams that were like extremely intense to the point where it was hard to write about them and almost like, I'd have headaches and wonder, what am I doing? And then I had this, little mini series of dreams about the city and the bricks and things that I talked about on my blog, which I'll leave up there. But I feel like I'm kind of like, I have to admit, I've kind of like abandoned it and I'm just going to remix them into these videos because I feel like it's easier for people to visualize what you're saying when you're saying it, kind of thing. Even though I think writing is still like an amazing skill to have, and I definitely want to tackle that, it's really challenging. And after having a few dreams of my city being just sort of like what I call just like psychological dreams, where it's just like symbols and mostly like weirdness, not so much like another dimension of our time and space reality or reality as we know it in like the concrete world, but more like kind of fuzzy or, just not fully committed and not 100% engaged or experiencing it as more than just, almost like a two-dimensional dream. But I got to go to the city, like, of my dreams, Victoria, in my dreams, and experience it the other night because I guess I built myself up to it. And I feel like building yourself up to something is, hugely confirmation that you want it, whether it's like a relationship or, like in my case, dreaming is so healing and it makes me so happy, right? But maybe for some people it's like dancing on a cruise ship or becoming a doctor, right? Or being able to play guitar or learning how to sing. All of these things are beautiful to me. Like everything that people aspire to, whatever stage of life that they're in, it's their life, right? And again, dreams are like intellectual property and they're challenging to express just like words and music. And it's not going to come out the way that you thought it would, but you can try. And music, it's a little different because like other people are hearing it, right? But they're going to hear it the way they hear it. So that's why I think it's important to try. So in my dream that I had, it was a double dream, and I did this like method of waking up and then going back to sleep. And it wasn't intentionally, because like not all of my dreams do I set intentions for the night before, but sleeping was definitely intentional. I was tired. And I got up at 5:30 in the morning, which for summer is like pretty late. But it took me an hour to get back to sleep, and I don't think I would have been able to get back to sleep if my youngest was in bed. She sometimes crawls into bed. But I lucked out and I had the bed to myself and I fell back asleep. And I had this dream until 8:30. And then I got up and she was there. But then she was really tired from camping and all this stuff. So I knew she was going back to sleep, and that was like my ticket to go back to this dream, which I didn't even like try. Like I just ended up back in this dream, and that's like not very common for me. Like that happens like once in a blue moon. I mean, I always go back to this city and I can do that, but going right back to this very precise place was like kind of a little bit surprising. And I think it was mostly because the message that was coming through for me was that I have unfinished business with this person, and it was my first husband and my ex mother in law. So, I mean, at first I was like, can't I, have this dream without them. But then I started to have these feelings. And where I was right downtown Victoria here in Market Square, which I've been dreaming about and like writing about. And it really took shape in this way that was like bigger than life, larger than life is what I want to say. Like just so like beyond a blueprint, beyond architecture, like kind of like satisfying, you know, like somewhere that you don't need to shop. Like it's more about the land, more about the architecture, about like the sacred elements of this area, which is it's a beautiful area. And I used to go there a lot as a teenager, like right between the ages of like when I stopped having nightmares and really wanted to get my dreams back, like between like 15 and like, well, I guess between like 14 and 16, I used to go down there a lot and like buy joints. Don't tell anyone. I'd have tea. We used to have a coffee shop that all the tables had broken mirror pieces that were like grouted together. They were like glued onto these tables. And like they had some tables from like our restaurants because we owned restaurants downtown when I was a kid. And so this was like a niche, right? This was a niche of like my childhood and my adolescence. And this street was just one over from where our restaurants were. So there's like this major tie to like my roots, you know? And these feelings were coming up for my ex-husband because at that time I was really in love with love. Like I was just really in love with like the idea of being a wife, having a wedding, like my whole paternal side, which I have nothing to do with now. They were all married and I really wanted to be a part of that family because I was like related by blood, but I never found a place in that family. Like I tried. I was like quite shy during those years. And then I went into modeling and my mom like was fully supportive of my recovery from being from that bloodline and like, you know, did a lot of creative therapy with me and stuff. And, you know, I got over it by the time I got divorced for the first time. I was 23 when I separated. And I think like 27 or 28 when I finally got the divorce. But that whole era was like a build up. Like it was a build up to like finally I was with this person and like they weren't the same religion as my paternal side that I was like in admiration of, but they were like he identifies as he was like leaving their religion. So it was kind of like I was feeling like I was being met halfway by the universe, like offered not the full meal deal, but like the, you know, the appy. I don't know. But I was like willing. The thing is that I was willing to like change for this person and I was willing to like be there for this person if they were like not, you know, supported, right? Which was a huge codependency trait that I was well aware of. But in order to understand your own codependency, in order to understand like your own weaknesses and the reasoning for why you do things, you need to explore it. Like nobody's going to go through life without making mistakes, right? And I didn't leave in the end because of the religion or because of my family or because of his mother. I left in the end, and this came up in the dream, because he didn't love me. And, you know, that was something that I wasn't willing to accept at the time. And I had to actually, like, you know, go through a destructive process to understand it. And when I broke that down, I also broke down, like, my daddy issues, my grandpa issues, because I actually remained very close to my grandfather, and he was the only person that I remained close to. And both of us were like quite similar in musical talent, in the way that we work, we don't stop, and how we communicated with the rest of the family. And so in the end, I didn't feel alone. at the end of the day, I ended the relationship quickly, which was smart. And then my mom actually followed me in my footsteps. Like, what do you know? Role reversal. And when she followed me and was like, good for you. I'm proud that you broke that cycle. She also introduced me to codependency and Codependence Anonymous and what that meant. So even though I had known that I was this kind of person that would settle for crap in order to be happy and like maybe finally have love, I also I didn't know what that was called, right? So there was some self-discovery that needed to happen, and it was because of my mother, who, this is a 12-step program for people who end up in relationships that are like, you know, not mutual, that aren't healthy and loving, that are not like fully what you want. Relationships where you end up sacrificing your own needs, where you put others first. And my mom and I were both really big people pleasers at the time, and it's an addiction and it's really hard to break. And you need help, you need support, you need love. And I told my husband at the time that I was going to these meetings literally the day after we got married, because that's when I first stepped into a meeting, and he didn't care. So this went on for like a year and a half. I guess like the straw that broke the camel's back was that I walked in on him and my best friend, and that was like unexpected for me because I'd been friends with this person for like half my life. Well, it felt like half my life. It was like definitely since I was, you know, young. I was young enough that like it would mean something that there would be that kind of betrayal. And in my dream, I could feel that. Like I could feel all the feelings that I was never really able to feel, because when somebody doesn't love you back and reciprocate, you kind of shut down. Like you want to feel happy and you're chasing it, but you don't actually have the opportunity because it's like somebody disables that. Somebody that is supposed to be encouraging it, right? And bouncing back off of you with the same beaming eyes and the same like open arms, and when your vision as a woman, or young lady, or even my age woman, middle aged, I guess, hopefully, is to be running into the arms of your partner, and instead you want to just run away, that's a red flag, right? And I think a human can only take so many red flags. And in my dream, I was able to actually feel all of these feelings that were unquestionably like love and infatuation, but they weren't for the person that I was married to. They were just feelings that I wanted to have that this person kept on sabotaging, right? And he ended up in the corner of this kind of like a studio downtown in my dream, in a place that's like very special to me. That's, I don't have a lot of people in my dreams. When I dream about the city, I'm usually just kind of oblivious to people. Like I, drive up the road and like, bypass people because I'm more interested in, buildings and spaces and energies and like magic and signs and like billboards and windows. I don't want to see a bunch of people, especially people that hurt me. But I guess it was necessary. And I guess like I'm trying to do this work in ways that are new to me, and also just ways that I haven't ever read about or heard about or studied. And, I think it's also healing for the people that come into your dreams as well, right? Forgiveness, and it's a safe place to do that. So, we had some interactions in my dream, which some of it was definitely wishful thinking. It's very common for me. And, I asked some questions like, why can't we be alone? And, like, Does your mom have to be here? And then in the second part of my dream, when I went back to sleep at 8:30, I went on a little trip by myself, which MIL didn't like very much, but I was like, too bad, it's my dream, right? Like I can go wherever I want. I went to the beach. And I was a little sad that he didn't join me because me back then, always felt like I was doing everything alone, and that feeling came back to me. But what I found on this beach was this beautiful tip of a shell. And I think I even have this. I found this shell. I don't know if it's here because it's this like very magical shell that just appeared. I don't even know where this shell came from. I'm going to drink a sip of my tea for the first time in this whole live. Ginger. Okay, so this shell, it just ended up on my night table somehow. I don't know how. And like I've never seen it. I've had big ones of these before. This one is very like particular though. It has like this line here. Like it's all smooth and then like all of a sudden it's got this line and it almost feels like a scar or something, like something very particular happened, like when you look at your palms. And I asked my kids, I'm like, where did you get that? And I felt like something really close to my ear when I got this. It was like a few weeks ago, I guess now, when this whole like thing happened with dreams and feathers and rainbows. Like there was these patterns happening like bi-weekly, and then like the moon started taking over because I promised myself I wouldn't like go back to the Gregorian calendar after 45 years old. Like I'm giving it like minimal attention. I think it's important. Otherwise, 6 months can go by and you're just kind of like, what's going on? Like, what happened to all my dreams? So, anyways, I found a shell in this dream and it was like about the size of the tip of this, like just hanging in like my dreamscape. Like, I don't know how it was there. It was just, I could feel it. Like, I could touch it, I could hold it, I could move it. I was bringing it with me. And I brought it back to the flat or whatever it is in Market Square that we were in. It was like a studio. I don't know. It just was like this big kind of like, it almost had kind of like a cabin feel, like wood, because there's a lot of wood down there. But it was kind of private, kind of not private. Like people could come in, but it was like it still had like a dining room and table, and MIL was mostly at the table, watching and stuff like that. And I overheard, husband, like, because I guess I was sort of in my past reliving it, say, I really need to go get some razors, right? In this particular way that he would talk. And I said, oh, well, like I have this shell razor. It's really special. Like, I guess the shell could be anything, in my dream it was like, could be whatever it wanted to be. And that wasn't good enough. Like it was rejected and I wasn't smart. And so I went downstairs to the shops and I looked around and there was so many good things, like just so many good things that could be anything, right? And the people that were working at them were women my age that were like, oh, that one's, you don't want to look at that. Like it was kind of almost like a pretty woman thing. Like, why are you here? You can't afford all this stuff, right? You're holding a shell, And little did they know, like it was my dream. I could have just taken all of it home if I wanted to. But I needed to go through that. I needed to go and, check out maybe like what my competition was at the time. Didn't see my best friend, but I mean, that was a secret anyways, right? But I went back up after a while to see if the mood had changed. And then I decided to use my shell in the shower for myself and get myself all looking beautiful. And I came out and I started feeling really good, but nothing had changed. The same vibe at the dining room table, the same vibe like in the dressing room or whatever that special spot was that I wasn't invited to go to. And I let my shell go. into the darkness. And I was just like, let it go. I don't need to be here anymore. Like, I'm done with this whole thing. And the show was really neat too, because it was like the Fibonacci, which is Italian, which was something that was going on, um, which I really loved. And, it's also like, it's intelligent. I find like the whole Fibonacci code, the spiral of life, roses, I saw roses like after this dream, um, on the road. Some guy was holding like a dozen roses, ready to get on the bus. It was so cute. And, just released this pattern, right? And the spiral was also telling me, like, you got to go up, right? Like, you don't want to keep going down into the depths of despair. Like, you left for a reason. And so I ended up just like I ended up waking up, like you get to a certain point where you kind of untether yourself, and the golden string of Ariadne just kind of like, you know, becomes weak, and then you just pull yourself back, right? Because there's no point in staying in a situation that's not good for you. But um it was like 10:44. I haven't slept like that for so long. It was absolutely amazing. And then, like I said, there was like some interesting shifts that went from, like, I was doing tasseography last week and felt very grounded and like very connected, and like a lot of energy was coming through the earth. And I'm talking like windstorms over the last couple days. There was almost like there was like a tsunami threat. Always a really good chuckle because that never happens, and when it does one day, it's going to be like, oh my god. um but various thoughts went through my head, and I had my neighbors around me, and I was like, what would we do? What would we do on this island if, like, all of our trees just started burning? Like, we don't talk about things like that, and we also don't talk about, like, what happens in families when there's a fire, right? Like, who puts the fire out? Like, where's the emergency services in a family when, trauma starts to become rampant again and cycles start to happen? And, these are the things that when we talk about them and get them off our minds and get like therapy, right, and psychological help, that prevent us, like, these conversations prevent us from deeper issues, like, maybe that doesn't resonate for everyone, but when we were camping, this feller was like being approached by camping um, rangers about why his insurance was expired, and he was on this, like, Capital Regional District property. And we tried to explain things in a situation. Like 7 hours later, the police were like really upset because they felt like they should be doing something better with their time, right? And it's true, they should. But when something is illegal, like parking your big huge vehicle without proper insurance, it has to get dealt with, because it's just the way that bureaucracy and the paper trail work. But my mom's friend was telling me, she's the one who hosts these camping events every year, and they're super chill. She was like, it went on and on after you left, and they were just really frustrated because they knew that if this person had had mental health resources and help in the 7 years that he hadn't been getting them, right, especially in the last 7 months or 7 days or whatever, nobody would have had to deal with that, right? He would have been like set up, and there wouldn't be like a homelessness problem. And it was just the obvious, But I guess that kind of brings me back to what I was saying at the beginning, which is when people are very empathetic, they don't often mix well with people that aren't, and sometimes what looks good on the surface is not so good when you get deeper, right? I mean, if you're going around like a broken shell, and all you have is like a part of yourself, like, you're not going to grow. You're not going to be, you're not going to feel comfortable being held. You're not going to want to be. You're going to want to find that part of yourself, and you're going to need to, so you can be whole again, right? And we sometimes look for those parts of ourselves in other people and other things. and even in the system, right? Which my mom did for a very long time, thinking she could get help with me because she didn't have it with that whole entire family. But the truth is, what you need is in you. And like, that's a huge statement to make, but it's true. Like, you're the only one who can create any of those kind of thoughts about yourself, right? And you will figure it out. You will figure it out. You don't even have to set an intention. You don't need to watch YouTube videos for like an hour and a half. You don't need to like hear podcasts every day for 2 hours. You can. And believe me, I do. I do all of that. I listen to podcasts when I'm cleaning, and I can't quit my job because I still need to do that sometimes, right? Even though I want to change and I want to do something new, that's the part of me that's like a crow. I have a little bit of neophobia and I'm kind of scared of new things because I got so comfortable in whatever it is that the system was conditioning me to get used to, which my mom was definitely used to before she was even able to walk, I'm sure. Like, I was lucky enough to have a mom that allowed me to be myself freely, to experience all of my feelings without trapping them or shutting them down like hers were. And so then I was able to dream at like levels that were, beyond anything that this world has offered. And this world is amazing, but the system is like so closely just guarding it. I just stole that word from like the welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy and abide by our community guidelines. It's got its clutches on nature, and nature is not going to let that happen. And that was definitely confirmed for me when the wind and the rainbows and the rain and the sprinkles and, you know, these little breaks of sunshine were happening in ways that were like directly aligning with when I was doing things during the last few days, whether it was something for myself or for work or my kids or my channel or my writing or sleep. And this mapping thing is not just in dreams. This is something that you can do in your mind. This is something you can do in your businesses. You can do this with your family, right? It's very healing. You can do it with your health, with your diet, you know. But it's really good to have. It's really good to work on. And I mean, I got my dreams back like pretty strong by the time I was about 28, 29, when it's like I didn't know if I was dreaming more often and for more hours than I was in reality. And at that time, because I was so like immersed in it and just like hooked on it and like wanting it, I was excited every time that I would like finish grocery shopping and get home. I'd be excited to like make dinner and like get the kids to bed. And it was so comforting that I had this. It was like a good book, right? And then I would get confused at, what am I dreaming about here? Like, I've seen this before, or wake up feeling like, it's so weird. Like, it looks exactly like this other dream. And then eventually it all kind of came together, like a sweater when you're knitting it and then you have all these pieces and then you put it together and you're like, it worked, right? But it takes time, of course. And, with kids, there's a lot of challenges. But once you get to that point, you can start working on other things, right? Like then you have a stable blueprint, a stable foundation, a stable map, a code, that every time that you're doing this, it's therapeutic because you're leaving off and then you're like starting where you left off, you know? So there were definitely some feelings that I like overcame, and it's always weird like visiting that kind of stuff. I have a really hard time visiting that kind of stuff in reality, even with a therapist, even with a counselor, because I guess because like when you're the only person who's doing it, it kind of feels like you're walking in the dark, and there's no one to guide you. And when you're dreaming, you can actually, see people and like imagine what it would be like if you could say the things that you need to say. I think that's also why I've always loved movies since I was a little girl, because the characters would seem like real to me with how vivid my imagination is, and something about them would always, connect in my brain to something that I would remember about somebody else, like a father, because I have two, I have many, like a lot of people in my life that are father figures. And my stepdad, who raised me and was like basically my father, and I feel like he's always been my father since I've ever existed in, the millions of years that I've probably existed. He just feels like so caring, like a father should be. And a lot of my memories with him are of us watching movies, and it would feel, like we were both there, right? And I guess we both just have that kind of imagination, and it's a powerful thing that everybody has. But again, when you can't see what somebody's saying, it's kind of hard, right? And that's why movies are so great. But dreams, you know, are for you. And when you talk about dreams, you're not talking about another person. When you're talking about a person in your dreams, you're talking about, things that are important to you. It's not like gossiping where you're like, guess what happened? That's what people do, right? When they don't know what to do with themselves, like, and then like people that do know what to do with themselves are talking about like ideas. But with dreams, that is an idea. The idea is that you're able to talk about something the way that you experienced it, and no one else can take that away. you know People talk about other people because they feel threatened, you know or because they're good at it. But when you're dreaming and you're like recovering a part of yourself, or dealing with like something that was toxic, or something that delayed your development, or your progress in love, or you know your dreams of what you would do for a living, or like education, things that are really important in the real world, and you dream about that kind of stuff, and like express it and talk about it or journal it, or like if you have somebody else that likes to dream, like I don't have a lot of people in my life that do, but I'm lucky that my daughter and I can talk about dreams, and now my youngest is talking about them more. But I've asked a lot of people before, like, do you dream? And it's like either, yeah, I have a lot of nightmares, or like, I don't remember them, or, yeah, I do, but they're really weird. And it's always like I always feel so, you know, deeply about having the opportunity to help a person like explore further, you know? And it doesn't have to be dreams. It's just the idea of unpacking stuff, you know, and like not shutting down those feelings, and not that it's like important to hold on to stuff or like relive trauma over and over, or like, you know, consistently think about like your ex or anything like that, or, you know, the person that wasn't there for you or didn't show up for you in a certain way, or that experience that, you know, is traumatizing to think about. But that part of you, that part of your imagination, that part of you that is activated when you're dreaming, that part of your brain is capable of so much more than we know. You know, it's capable of like so much more fulfillment and happiness and thinking on its very own, independently, like with you, on your behalf, for you, and providing that magic to like move up, you know, and aspire. My foot is like so numb right now, and I don't know why. Like if I like were to walk on it right now, I wouldn't be able to walk. Do you guys think that I should do that and see if it happens? I'm sure you can imagine what it would look like. So it's challenging, and like my throat chakra always feels kind of dry, you know. And the last time that I tried to talk about my dreams with my counselor, it was like not a good idea. It just became a non-subject immediately because it's very sensitive stuff, and it's hard for anybody else to imagine what the hell you're talking about, right? But you know, that's what having somebody in your life that can sit in you, in that with you, not sit in you. That would be my children. But first we have to sit in it ourselves, right? And be willing to take it in, to endure it, and um, it's just a beautiful, you know, remarkable process that, you know, I feel like I want to like hit snooze when I have dreams like that, because I just, you know, I want to see what happens, right? But this is important. This is important work. This world is, you know, it's in a state, and we need to be here, and I understand that. So, you know, I'm here for it. But there is a part of me that, you know, it's like people who have a passion for fashion design, right? Or people who have a passion for painting, and then like that's all they want to do. I think more people need to do what they want to do. I think I'm seeing my country become like there's so much. What I don't want to judge is, you know, the very thing that I think needs to be revealed, right? Because so much of it is concealed. Like like really thick makeup, you know, and the problems are problems because they were created by people who create problems. And they're the people that also, you know, claim to be having these solutions. And you know, it's kind of like difficult sometimes to put what you have learned spiritually into perspective with what you're seeing in reality, right? And I can hear little footsteps, but I guess what I saw when I saw, you know, the shift in politics today with everything going on is that I can hear children. what was I saying? Is that it's a shift in not just politics, but it's a shift um, in the way that, like, I don't know, it's a personal thing, I guess, for me, but I know that I'm not alone in it. You like, you feel bothered when you see things that are going on that you can't change, that you don't think there's enough time to change, right? Like when you're putting on like a massive production of like a beautiful musical or like a dance performance, Excalibur or Cabaret, and you're this like person that plays these characters or like roles, or dances these certain like um this like these certain choreographed dances, performances, where you can see like so many things that would make the show like sparkle more, or how having the makeup different, like a certain way would be better, right? And for me, that's like the world. Like it's always been like that. My parents would always like, squirm in their seats when I would tell them how the world could be better, like how if like everyone just held the governments accountable for not giving anything back to the earth, for what they've allowed these big corporations to take, and then taken all the taxes, like etc. Right? And logical things to me were never logical to them, right? But that's the kind of brain that anybody who is like very focused on vision will have. Like they will have the ability to see things in a different light, in the light of um, a different consciousness. So, and on a smaller scale, in my dream with my ex-husband, I was seeing how it could have been. And I was seeing it without the pain that I was in at the time. I was seeing it without, the immaturity that I might have had because I was so young. I was seeing it without the fear of what other people thought. And when you have that, that's a power, that nobody can take, right? But it's also a power that nobody's using except for you. And that can get a little bit frustrating. So the more that people, you know, like cultivate their own joy, their own vision, their own craft, the more that, their ideas will come to fruition. And it won't just be 9 to 5, right? And taxes and digital world and zeros and ones and on and off and paid and not paid and debt and credit and debit and credit, and you know it won't be like up and down and stock markets, and it'll be sunrise, sunsets, like this spectrum that's meant to happen, right? And there are days where I feel my vision is changing, and I have to adapt to that because I'm not gonna, let myself become desensitized and, end up mentally unwell like I did the first time that I lost sight of my dreams, right? Which I was very young and didn't know how to handle the effects of that kind of withdrawal. But I had a counselor say that when I came down from the Northwest Territories, that it was essentially like an animal coming out of the forest and being domesticated. Like that's the way my brain had been developing. And then all of a sudden I was in the city. And so I had this like complex, right? And I think everyone has a right to be validated in that way. um, I don't, I don't know if I'll ever have the ability to formulate sentences and words without having like throat chakra blocks and like heart chakra tension. And gravity is not my favorite thing. I think it's useful on this planet, but when we're talking about the mind and when we're talking about like freedoms and abilities, I don't think inside this bubble. I don't think inside this like, little like molecule that we're living in of gravity and, extremes. Like, it's all or nothing a lot of the time here. You either, are a functioning person or you're not. You either are like surviving or you're not. And there's not a whole lot of like curiosity, you know, about, well, what if you're not one of us, or what if you're not one of them, or what if I am my own person? It's pretty. That's a pretty gray area for the people that you know like it black and white. You know what I mean? And for the people that don't like it black and white, it's kind of unfair for them to just have to suck it up. I know that from experience. And every time I've ever talked to a therapist, a counselor, a psychiatrist, a doctor about my mental health issues that have been a concern from myself, mostly, like, yeah, my parents were concerned and all that, but it's mostly been myself going, what's wrong with me, right? And when I talk about my dreams, it usually gets skipped over because that's not normal, right? And that's the whole point. That when somebody is trying to figure it out, it's because it isn't normal, and that's like usually what they should talk about, right? Well, what's not normal for you? Like, what's the problem? Like, I'm not happy in this world, and when I dream, I feel so much better, and I'm having all these crazy dreams about this and that and the other thing. Oh, well, let me give you some medication. Like, okay, like, let me take your job away from you, That's what it's doing. And with kids, like I've been talking about before, with the children of the future, you can't take their job away, right? If they see what's happening and they figure it out, they're not going to be happy. Especially, oh, all of a sudden now, like, social media ban, right? So now that your 13-year-old brain, like, has been doing all these things that, like, a 19-year-old, 16-year-old has been doing, and now all of a sudden you can't, you know? So we have to be able to, like, teach our children and, raise ourselves as adults that have inner children within us, that freedom is good, right? And it comes with responsibility, and maybe there's not full responsibility happening around us by the adults around us, but if we learn to respect each other and exercise boundaries and communicate, then we can protect our dreams, protect our visions, and everyone can be happy, right? And that's a hard mentality to have. I think sometimes it's hard to just be positive, right? Or, let it go and let it be. Um, it's That's just the way that I feel like it is. Like, I've accepted that, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it and be like, but things are changing, and soon it's going to be like this, or soon it's going to be like that, because I know it's not, right? I know that I just do. It's just the way we change how we see things is adapting. And, we're not going to be able to transmute everything. There's a lot of like BS, that's just going to stay being BS. But um, little by little, I feel like I've been able to make time for this particular aspect of my life, make time for, you know, studying it more, studying dreams, and all the things that I like that are spiritual. But I think everybody has a calling. It's just they don't know. they have it until it's like truly enabled to be discovered by them. And in order for that to happen, they need to have freedom. Like, freedom is so important. And when you're dreaming, you're free. Nobody can stop you. Like, you don't need a passport. You don't need, approval. Like, you don't need to worry about crossing the border. Sure, you might have some hiccups along the way, right? You might like I've had some pretty crazy nightmares, um, because I'm trying to get through to myself, you know, not because like I'm gonna wake up in a pool of like poison. I know that's not gonna happen, right? But don't let anyone scare you from what you want to do. And if it's art, do it. And if it's making shoes, do it. And if it's weaving baskets, do it. And if it's traveling, do it. Whatever you do, make sure you're doing it because you want to do that thing that you want to do, right? Even if you don't know what it really is that you want to do. Like, I probably didn't know what I wanted. Um, when I look back in like a past life regression lens, which I started doing at 12, I see somebody that was like, you know, always getting hurt in love over and over and over and over and over. And it's, led me to being fearful of loving experiences. And I started facing that like recently, but over time, like since as a kid, I always clung to like the idea of being alone and old, like being an old lady that had like lots of purses, but like didn't have a lot of money, obviously. Like, I was afraid of things like success and money. And I know it's because at some point I lost those things. I lost love, I lost money, and we become scared of the things that are new to us in this life because somehow we connect it in our brains with something that we had taken away from us, right? And I'm not saying that like everybody has past lives, but it could have been when you were 6 months and you like didn't have the toy that you wanted. It could have been, when you were 6 years old and you wanted to go to the air show with grandpa, but mommy thought it was going to be too dangerous. Or you wanted to be like, I wanted to be in ballet, and I got to be in a lot of things. My parents put me in everything because I was like severely attention deficit disorder, and doctors would never see it because I would clam up in the doctor's office. So my parents were constantly looking for something new for me to do, right? That's what you would think you would do with somebody who has like a million things going on in their brain. But what would happen is I wouldn't get the confidence that I needed in whatever it is that I wanted to do. And then when somebody became competitive with me or wanted to take my spotlight away, or, and for one example is like I wanted a certain color of outfit once in a show, and I got the one that I wanted the least. Like, I got the one that was like the worst color. And I thought to myself, why would they even make three colors? Like, just make, like, we're young, make them all the same. Kids don't want to have to choose like that, right? But parents, adults, teachers, like they try to be different and creative, and that's fair. But it was like it set me back because I had just gotten to that point, right, in my ballet career. And you can see it in my pictures that like I'm restless, I'm nervous, I'm awkward, and I don't feel like myself, right? And this starts early on in our lives where we don't get to choose stuff. You know what I mean? But I think that we should be able to choose things very early on to do with ourselves. And I think they do that in some places, but this particular life, I ended up here in this part of the world where, if I had it my way, like we wouldn't be reading like all the same books, right? And we wouldn't be learning all the same facts about science, and we wouldn't all be learning about the same God. And it felt like that here. Like it felt like, you know, I went to like a Catholic school in my early years, and it just felt like everybody was kind of treated the same, and we were all the same kind of person, and there wasn't really any differentiation, no like recognition of everybody's different unique kind of offerings, kind of thing. And it wasn't spiritually fulfilling for me. And bless the hearts of people who go to school and get a doctorate and become medical emergency room doctors and stuff like that. But honestly, I feel like we wouldn't have needed all of that if we hadn't anticipated all of these things happening to create an economy, and create a future. I think our future would have been on a more sustainable level if we had anticipated and projected, support and self-discovery and independence instead of like codependency and people pleasing and, high grades and stuff like that. Because everyone is essentially able to understand the human being, not just people who went to school, right? Like exams are cool, but I think there's other methods of, science and healing and recovery and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, it's interesting to go away from reality and, go on essentially like a little trip, a little journey, a little adventure. It's like traveling, and I highly recommend it, especially if you have any kind of like history of, pain or sadness or loss. And at the time that I got married for the first time, 3 out of 4 marriages were ending in divorce, and even more second marriages were ending in divorce. And that was really hard to hear about, but that's what was happening. Bipolar was on the rise. It seems like these problems and like human frustrations like surface so rapidly, and the way that they're handled is so slow, so I've slowed down a lot. It's just been really helpful to live the slow life, and not like I don't want to do anything, just if my dishes sit there for 24 hours, they sit there for 24 hours. And for some reason, I feel like I get a lot more done in the day. And then, I'm not worrying about as much when I go to sleep, and I sleep better, and I have, phenomenal, like little getaways every few days or so. So that was my dream, and all the other little nutshells around it. Speaking of nutshells, I don't know how good this camera is. My phone isn't letting me do anything live, but this little shell here is a peanut, and she found it. It's kind of like it's 2 peanuts stuck together. Like they're kind of like growing into each other. Oops. Now they're falling. And yeah, I've never seen anything like it, and it kind of goes with the shell being, having its little like surgical scar. And then she's been finding these little, like these might be more common, these little acorn ones, but yeah, I've never seen a peanut like, it's like a Gustav Klimt peanut. like self holding self, you know, intimately. Like, I don't know. Anyways, life is nuts. Okay, so if you were able to come this far, thank you for coming and joining me. I'm going to pull you guys a Starseed Oracle now from my Oracle deck. There's supposed to be 53 cards, and my kids have been like going nuts in here, so I'm going to count them really quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 20. 31, 32, 33, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 2, 33, 34, 35, 36, 38, 50, 51, 52. Okay. Apparently one is missing. But I may have miscounted. I'll update you guys later, I promise. Okay. And if there is, it's okay. I'll never know which one it was. But then I'll never actually ever pull that card either, so. Just like have this urge just to listen to Tori Amos. Tori Amos. For like days and days. The piano. I've really been studying how every singer has like this signature built into them, and it like inevitably comes out. It's really beautiful. It's like knots in the wood, you know. And singers, they're all kind of, I like to sing, and when I sing, I feel like so subconsciously like welded to singers, you know, like it's like this tribe. Ooh, there we go. Whoa. Okay, 2 cards came out. Okay, guys, we got cracked open and fall into my arms. Cracked open is rock bottom. Surrender to the alchemy of life. You guys see that? It's very satisfying to look at something like this. Like, it's just, everyone has this light within them. You can even see the hearts up here. My girls have really been into hearts, finding hearts in everything. Rocks. My daughter saw a heart petal today. That wasn't even a yawn. That was just like, I don't know, it was a wind from outside. Do you ever just stop and like, I've been doing this since I was like super young, but I'll just like stop and just listen to like everything, like wind, especially ocean, like wherever I am, I'll just like observe as much as I can with my ears, you know, and close my eyes and just like really, it's meditation essentially, but like it's also just taking the time to just detach, like unplug, you know, just disappear for a moment. Like, what would the universe be like if you were gone? It makes you really appreciate like the people that love you, you know, like there's some people like right now in my life, besides my clients, like of course they'd be like, oh my god, what am I gonna do without a cleaner? But they're my friends. Most of my clients have ended up being like my best friends, but there's some people in my life right now where it's like I know for a fact that like if all of a sudden Naomi was a butterfly, all of a sudden cute little crow turned into like this massive eagle, like some kind of metaphysical eagle that was like, goodbye. And just like started flapping my wings and like went to another planet. Like there'd be some tears and there would be like some hard feelings, you know? And we don't even appreciate ourselves that much sometimes. I can tell you as a mom, like sometimes I'm like, go make dinner and go to bed. That's what you're gonna do, you know? But that's, you know, that really hurts me. Like, no, you know, I'm worth taking half an hour to play piano, okay, and have my headphones on and listen to my own heart. You know what I mean? Um, that's alchemy, like surrendering to there's nothing wrong with rock bottom. There's not. There's everybody has one, right? Mine was like the extreme of like family sentimental um you know, lifelong memories. Like I wanted to be a part of like a perfect quilt, you know what I mean? And it didn't happen. And when it didn't happen and my whole family was like this big, I hate to say it, but like a disappointment in my life, right? Like I said, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Um, and I gave and I gave and I gave, you know, like watered and watered and watered and, you know, essentially like bought all the food and everything, right, for this family tree. And like it, I don't know how I got here, right? Like that's not what I would do if you know, if I was that family. But um that's the way that they saw me, right? And when I hit rock bottom, most of my guilt, most of my shame was because of what they thought, you know, and what they projected onto me. And I had to start projecting onto myself. I had to stop making that my problem. And when I did, you know, when I like let it go and like just surrendered, I guess, to like whatever the universe was doing, which was like, you know, hey, you're better than that. Like, I didn't bring you here for that. Remember? You know, that's when I was like, whoa, breaking can actually be, there's a silver lining, you know, like there's a blessing in disguise here. Um, you know, I'm remembering that I'm a dreamer. I'm remembering that like I have light inside of me and um that's making me closer to myself. And then fall into my arms, surrender. So we have two surrender cards. That's pretty cool. Holding the opposites, extremes of life. Yeah, this is what I'm saying with the world being so black and white. It's hard not to take it personally because you kind of feel like you have to be all in or like you just don't count, you know, sometimes. And that's where we learn that not everything has to be hard. They tell you, you know, oh, you shouldn't do things the hard way, right? Well, is there another way? I don't see a soft way out there. So you want to tell me where that is and I'll take it. Um, Instead, you know, sometimes it's better just to surrender to what's difficult because what's difficult is going to teach you, you know, how to deal with life's problems and difficulties. And sometimes, honestly, like I was thinking about this before I got on here because I saw a couple of like things on Facebook. One of my friends went to a festival, and so I went on there and um, checked the messages and saw a video and was like, oh wow, that's really cool. Like I'm glad I didn't go because I wouldn't be able to recover from that, but it looks really fun. Um, I used to be able to do things like that, but you know, then I, you know, saw a friend request and a notification. It was a friend request that I was quite happy to have. And a notification that was something really silly, you know, like, I don't know, some group that I used to belong to like 14 and a half years ago or something, you know, somebody saying something about something. And I'm like, oh, wow, like that's really relevant. Um, but I ended up seeing like some politics and whatever. And from here, from my perspective, like where I'm at, I guess, like in terms of spiritual development and like just loving my little nest here, not really wanting that in here. I was like, I wish they could just like board some kind of spaceship, and just like have fun. You guys bring me all your little blouses and your wine collection, your whole cellar, you know, take, take your meadows and your horses too. Like, take it all. Like, you're pretty much capable at this point. Like, you can probably afford it. Just if you're gonna do it, right? We don't need to see it. You know what I mean? But that's kind of that's kind of mean, and I don't want to be a mean person. So everyone is welcome here on this planet. But there are days where I'm just kind of like, I'm done with it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm more into like crop circles and stuff. And honestly, like, I just, I don't think like anybody can own the kind of stuff that I think is really valuable, right? Like, it's cool that there's real estate and land and businesses and signage and, overpasses and stuff like that. But I think that like the real genuine intelligence, it's not going anywhere. It's staying inside the places where it's best kept, you know? So, your dreams, your visions, whatever's inside you is like the world's best kept secret, the universe's best kept secret. It's the cave of wonders, right? Fall into my arms when you're hurting, when you're down, when you're in rock bottom, right? Which a lot of people don't even think they have because they don't have a problem, right? I didn't, but I was like raised around people who drank, hundreds of them. And, that was a lot. And, there was like violence and there was this and there was that. And I couldn't just be the person that held my head up and was like, I have a university degree and, I left that behind, right? I cared for a lot of those people. So, naturally I was going to have some weaknesses, right? And end up in situations that weren't so great. But, this is the power of the mind, right? This is the power of like the universe and the connection that we have. It's like the connection that you have to whatever life giver you have. Maybe your life giver wasn't the life giver you hoped. And I know what that's like because my paternal, physical, biological life giver was, never there for me and still isn't. But the life giver to me is the universe, right? And I can trust the universe. I can't trust, all these people that I don't know that are like, give us your money. I'm not motivated by that. I'm not motivated to give a portion of like what I work really hard for to people to trust them with my future. I'm going to trust the universe with my future. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that more people will become aware of the fact that there's more power within them and it's a stronger power than there is outside of them. It might seem like you're powerless, but that's a choice. It's a choice to be submissive, right? And yeah, it's a choice to fall into the arms of the universe. So this really makes me want to go on a trip. And maybe not necessarily on an airplane, which, I mean, it would be nice. And I might one day, but definitely a trip like into my dream world and like stars because they're just so beautiful. And there's places out there, beautiful places out there that you don't have to pay taxes on. So I highly recommend trying it. I honestly don't have a lot of like recommendations other than like literally just inner child healing work is the most amazing stuff. You can start that whenever at any point in time in your life. And regression therapy, because you can do regression therapy on like any point in time. Like, Eckhart Tolle says like everything is kind of like here and now, right? And one of the things I realized when I studied deep, deep, deep into the Bible when I was married, because I did by choice, is that, how do we even know that any of that has happened? Like maybe that's a story that hasn't happened yet, and it was discovered a little too early and cashed in on. It's like, hey, you got this story. Like, oh, sweet, let's make a movie out of it. No, I'm just gonna make like this book and like sell it, right, to a whole bunch of people. It's like that's not that person's not even here. That writer isn't even here like making the deal for it to be here. Like what if he doesn't even know? Or she, or them, or they, or it, or whatever, And what if they're not even alive yet? Like it's just weird what people do, to make money. And I'm not against religion. Like I think that there's like I was on the beach the other day and there was like some drum circle happening with like beautiful songs in the form of like hallelujah and beautiful words. And I was crying, right? Because it was so beautiful. And these people had like, their hearts were just so in it. And I loved that, right? But where I'm coming from in terms of this kind of like recruitment or like business model, it didn't work for me. And I felt like I wouldn't be important enough if I didn't do it, and I wouldn't be like, looked after, right? So I chose to surrender and fall into the arms of my own angels. And they, I like the Bible when I'm thinking about them, and I feel great when I read the Bible when I'm thinking about my angels. But when people use fear or, turn the Bible into something that like only they understand and I don't, it's scary. And I don't like that. I would rather see it as a cute kid storybook on my bookshelf, right? It's just really, 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 really long. But when I was a kid, I tried writing the Bible and I got my pencil out and like some paper from school out of a duotang, and I got onto my grandma's bed because we lived with her at the time and my parents were away and I was getting babysat. And I turned on her lamp and she had like 1,000 necklaces in her room hanging. She was like very boho and had scarves and stuff. And, I asked the spirit to come onto me, into me, onto me, whatever. And I just started writing from like the very beginning of her Bible. And my parents and grandma, like, you know, for them it was just confirmation, right? But that was like, for me, that was the beginning of something. It was, God had his beginning in the book. Like, why can't I have mine? Kind of thing. And you can have your beginning at any time. There is no right time to begin something, So don't let the world's problems, don't let like even the tiniest problem stop you. Because I think, if you're going to dream, go all the way, right? Even if it's just a daydream, take the moment. Even if you have to like tell your boss, like, I just needed some extra time in the bathroom. Sorry, ate a little too much chocolate. Or like, I've been getting some testing done. I need like extra time. But yeah, that's where I started, and now, I don't do that as much anymore because I feel like a moment to me is forever, and they start stretching after a while. It's neuroplasticity of the brain. So yeah, okay. So that was my dream, and like my life story. And if you guys want to join me next time that I have one, I think I would love to share here and post it on my website. Might take me a few weeks to get the last 6 months of them up there, but I've been trying to keep it like in a sequence of like when it's actually relevant and really significant and important, and also like to meditate, and watch for things happening, and like we all have our own little webs, right? And for those of us that have arachnophobia, we all have like our own cloud. Everybody like cumulus here? Okay, I'm gonna go drink my tea and unwind myself a little more to sleep. And I hope you guys have really good dreams in the meantime, in the dream time. And if you have any questions or like, want to share something, or you feel like this is like really relevant to you and you're experiencing something similar or trying to, drop me a TDD, trying to dream, or TTYS, no, TTTYS, trying to tell you something. Just trying to come up with my own little like codes. Yeah. Okay. I love you guys. You're so cute. And this was all very cute. And I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your week. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 a.m. Okay. Thank you so much. I love you and I'm so grateful for you.